Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay, here to talk a little bit about what's going on tonight. Elimination Chamber 2023. The match that everybody is focused on tonight is going to be Sami Zayn versus Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship. There are other matches tonight um, in Montreal that are quite intriguing that many people are interested in or have predictions on. Particularly, one of my other ones that I'm looking forward to is Brock Lesnar versus Bobby Lashley. I initially said I wasn't looking forward to this match, and I'm not as far as WrestleMania is concerned. I don't think this match, we've seen it before as far as WrestleMania is concerned, but I want to see. There are rumors that Bray Wyatt will get involved in this, and it will lead to a setup of Bray Wyatt versus Brock at WrestleMania. So that's one that I'm paying attention to. Another one that I'm paying attention to is the U.S. title match. My prediction is that Austin Theory will retain, but it will lead eventually to an Austin Theory versus Seth Rollins match at WrestleMania. But the title of this video is if Sami Zayn doesn't win tonight and somehow Roman Reigns ekes by for whatever reason with the Universal Championship, this could lead to another Montreal screwjob, a Montreal screwjob part two. Now, anybody that's watching this doesn't need me to explain what the original Montreal screw job was. We all know, we all remember. In fact, if you don't know or remember, I have a video in the archives that is almost an hour and a half long explaining the background of uh, what is the original Montreal. And last night on SmackDown, the reaction that Sami Zayn got by the Montreal faithful was just unreal. I mean, the entire arena was behind him. Not to mention the reaction that he got this past Monday in Brooklyn on Raw. Sammy has all the momentum going for him. He has everything going for him. And if Paul Levesque, aka Triple H, but now that he's in charge of the WWE and he's no longer a wrestler, I'll just call him Paul Levesque. If he doesn't make the right decision tonight when it comes to changing his plans of just having a straight one-on-one match between the winner of the 2023 Royal Rumble, Cody Rhodes, and Roman Reigns for the Universal Championship at WrestleMania 39. If he doesn't pivot from that and make that change, then he has once again screwed the Montreal faithful, just like he allegedly did in 1997. Because remember, a lot of people laid claims that they were the originators of the plan to screw Bret Hart. You heard Jim Cornette talk about it. You heard Vince Russo talk about it. You heard Earl Hebner's theories. You've heard a bunch of theories. It's the wrestling version of the Kennedy assassination, basically. There's a whole bunch of conspiracy theories surrounding what exactly happened. But Paul Levesque was one of those who, on a phone call allegedly with Vince McMahon, suggested that they screw Bret Hart. Of course, Paul Levesque was at that time a member of DX, feuding on screen and off screen as a member of the Clique, feuding with the Hart Foundation and Bret Hart, and he was of course he was instrumental in it. They didn't call him the Game for nothing. Triple H was a student in the game. He probably studied the various screw jobs they had done throughout wrestling history, throughout the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and of course the 80s. So he was one of the ones that suggested that they'd screw Bret Hart. So now that he's in charge, fast forward to 2023, now where we're at, he has the chance to make it right with the Montreal faithful. He has a chance to do the right thing and elect another one, this time a native son, a French Canadian person, Sami Zayn, to the spot at WrestleMania 39, going with this momentum. But He also, just like in the Brian Alvarez show and Brian Alvarez Dave Meltzer show, Dave brought up that since Paul Levesque has taken charge of WWE, he has never pivoted from his plans. Vince McMahon, especially towards the latter half of his time in charge of WWE, was known for pivoting. Sometimes within hours of the start of the show, he would completely change plans, rip up the scripts, and just start over. He became really dictatorial like that. But allegedly, in the old days, in like the days of the golden era when they had less pay per views or less PLEs, less events, Vince would book from one WrestleMania to another, and he would book backwards. Months of booking and just book backwards leading up to that, especially when Pat Patterson was alive. That's where we get whole year story arcs, like for example, the explosion of the Mega Powers in 1989 at WrestleMania 5. Really long term storytelling. But towards the latter half of his time there, as pay per views increased, as live TV became more important with the advent of Nitro and other things, Vince was known to book on the fly, just like he used to accuse WCW of doing impulsive booking, which many would theorize that that's what led to the downfall of WCW, both in the Brian Alvarez book, The Death of WCW, and The Rise and Fall of Nitro by Guy Evans. That is suggested as one of the reasons why WCW went down, at least creatively. We know that Jamie Kilner was ultimately the one that pulled the plug, wanting to take TBS in another direction. But when it comes to creatively, on the fly booking was one of those reasons. But sometimes in wrestling, you do need to do on the fly booking. You do need to change directions and change courses. And I believe this time, today, tonight, at Elimination Chamber 2023 is one of those times. You need to really listen to the fans. Because another thing that people didn't like about the old regime of Vince was that he never listened to the fans. He stopped listening to the fans long ago, possibly in 2001, after he bought WCW and ECW. Competition dried up. TNA never reached that level where they were true competition with him. And by the time AEW even started up, he was pretty much already gone. But he would just do what he wanted. He would never listen to the fans. For example, he never turned John Cena heel when fans were clamoring for it, when the time was right for it, where he could have aligned possibly John Cena with the Nexus, and the Nexus could have survived with a more charismatic leader like heel John Cena. Whereas they had Wade Barrett, who they didn't even put the title on him. You know what I mean? And Nexus never won any of the bigger championships, which is why I consider Nexus to be one of the most failed factions in the WWE. Why? Because Vince didn't want to pivot from his original plan of always having John Cena as a babyface. In hindsight, it turned out good for Cena. Now Cena's a Hollywood celebrity and people love him and adore him. At least, uh, with the exception of that incident where he had to grovel in front of the Chinese Communist Party for acknowledging the true reality that there are really two Chinas and not one. But that was that was a more political issue. As far as wrestling fans and fans of pop culture in general, John Cena is now considered an icon and a legend. Just stay out of politics, John. You know, and likewise with The Rock. Wrestlers and politics sometimes they work out good in the case of Jesse Ventura or Glenn Jacobs, but other times, uh, you know, they should just keep those realms separate and never the twain shall meet. But still, I digress. Vince never changes plans with Cena, and he never diverted from the plan of Cena. Likewise with Roman Reigns. It wasn't until he was absolutely pressured to that he decided to turn Roman Reigns heel. WrestleMania after WrestleMania, Roman Reigns was given chances and opportunities. One of the most infamous ones was in 2016 when Roman Reigns was challenging Triple H. Right, it was supposed to be one of their biggest events. Was their first time in Levi Stadium, where they were supposed to set an indoor attendance record, breaking that of even WrestleMania 3, the real record of WrestleMania 3. Right? So they don't pivot from their original plan. They take the belt off Roman in Survivor Series. In 2015, they put it on Sheamus. Then they eventually put it back on Roman, and then Roman loses it at the Royal Rumble. And then what happens? Triple H has it. And even though the fans are booing him like crazy out of the arena at WrestleMania 32, Vince doesn't pivot from it. And ultimately, it cost him because this WrestleMania 32, was considered one of the worst absolute WrestleManias of all time. And why? Because of Vince's stubbornness. So I beg Paul Levesque to not do the same thing. Don't be like Vince McMahon. Don't be so stubborn, and open your ears and open your eyes to what the fans really want and really are clamoring for. Because a lot of times, not all the times, but when fans do dictate with their cheers and with their audience responses, and they force the hand of whomever is in charge of WWE to change courses, it is more memorable and more successful. I point you to the example of WrestleMania 10. We know that Vince was 100% behind Lex Luger. We had the Lex Express and everything. But then he decided he was going to wait till WrestleMania of that next year in 1993 to put the belt on Luger. But what happened? Luger and Bret Hart both came out at the same time. Bret Hart got more cheers, so he decided to pivot to Bret Hart away from Luger. And the guy he wanted, Luger, did not become the champion, but Bret Hart did. And it is successful and it was memorable. Likewise, from 2002 to 2004, all we saw was feuds between Triple H and Shawn Michaels. They seemed to be the favorites of Vince McMahon, in the pocket of Vince McMahon. But the two guys from the undercard that were undersized guys that nobody believed in, that made a journey from Japan, from Mexico, from ECW, from the undercard of WCW. They had to leave WCW because it was an oligarchy there and they weren't getting the opportunities that they were supposed to be getting. Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. When Vince McMahon decided to pivot away from Triple H and Shawn Michaels and listen to the fans and give the fans something that they could appreciate in Chris Benoit when he won the Royal Rumble in 2004, and then went on to WrestleMania 20 to make Triple H tap out. It was a memorable moment. It was something that the fans could enjoy. As a matter of fact, many fans compare it to the wrestling equivalent of Denzel Washington and Halle Berry winning Oscars in 2002. In other words, it was the people's choice. It was something that the people wanted. It was a guy that the people chose, even though he was an underdog. Same thing with Eddie Guerrero. They were completely behind Brock Lesnar. When he first came in, Brock Lesnar was a beast. He later became the Beast incarnate, but at that time, he was known as the next big thing. But the people wanted Eddie Guerrero. Eddie Guerrero had the momentum. So in No Way Out 2004, what does Eddie do? He defeats Brock Lesnar, and he goes on to not only do that in Kurt Angle. And that's why we had that memorable moment where Benoit and Eddie Guerrero hug, and you hear Jim Ross over commentary say, "Finally, Chris Benoit." by God, finally has become the world heavyweight champion of this world because the fans got behind him. The fans got behind the underdog. Likewise, in 2014, WrestleMania 30, they got behind Daniel Bryan. The company didn't want Daniel Bryan. They wanted somebody like Randy Orton, somebody like Batista. Batista was in the Marvel movies. He left the WWE. In 2010, he became successful on his own. That year, leading into the Royal Rumble, that year, if you had watched any little bit of Raw in any part of the early part of 2014, you would have swore that Batista was going to win the Royal Rumble. It's almost like you knew. You know what I mean? It, it was something that was implanted in you. And what happens? He wins the Royal Rumble. And they want to have Randy Orton and Batista as the main event at WrestleMania 30 going into in New Orleans, Louisiana. Their first WrestleMania live on the WWE Network. That's who the company wants. But who the people want is Daniel Bryan. They've been chanting yes, yes, yes since he got screwed over at that previous year's SummerSlam. So the company had to pivot. They were forced to pivot. They didn't want Daniel Bryan, but the people wanted Daniel Bryan. Just like they didn't want Chris Benoit, but the people wanted Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. They didn't want Bret Hart, but the people wanted Bret. And right now, where we stand in the modern day in 2023, in Montreal, of all places, the infamous place where it happened before. Don't let it happen again. Vince, don't let what happened to you in AT&T Stadium in 2016 or what happened in the Montreal Screwjob in 1997 happen again. Don't go with what you feel. Go with what the people feel. Because each and every time, I said it was Levi Stadium, but it was AT&T Stadium in 2016. It was Levi Stadium in 2015 where they wanted to go with Roman the year Roman won the Royal Rumble, and the fans didn't want that either. And they had to, and that was an example too where they had to pivot. They had to do something to send the fans home happy. And what happens? Seth Rollins cashes in his money in the bank, and neither Brock Lesnar nor Roman Reigns walk, walk away with the championship. This is another example. You've had several examples in WWE's history where they've done the right thing and they've went with what the people want. And you've had other examples where they went with what they want. WrestleMania 9, 1993, 20 years ago, was a time that they went with what they wanted to do. The people wanted Bret Hart. The people loved Bret Hart. The people adored Bret Hart, just like they adored him in 1997. They adored him in the same way in 1993. But the company wanted Hulk Hogan. The company chose Hulk Hogan. But what happened? The fans shit on it. Just like they shit on Roman Reigns both times. WrestleMania 31 and WrestleMania 32 back to back. Each and every time the WWE has gone with their choice, the fans have shitted on it. Each and every time they've gone with the people's choice. Even Stone Cold Steve Austin. When Stone Cold Steve Austin first came into the WWE in 1995 on the Brother Love Show as the ringmaster, managed by Ted DiBiase. He was not somebody that Vince was behind. He was not somebody that Vince believed in. But because of the curtain call, because of the incident of the curtain call, the kayfabe breaking incident on May 19th, 1996, Vince McMahon was forced to pivot. And instead of putting the King of the Ring title on Triple H, he had no other choice but to put it on Stone Cold Steve Austin. And they wanted Stone Cold Steve Austin to be a heel, but the fans chose Stone Cold Steve Austin to be their favorite. And 2 years later, in 1998, in a historic WrestleMania main event with Mike Tyson as the special enforcer, Stone Cold Steve Austin dethroned Shawn Michaels, and the Austin era begins. But Austin was the people's choice, just like Daniel Bryan was, just like Bret Hart was, and just like Sami Zayn is now. So if you go with Sami Zayn, you go with the people's choice, especially in Montreal, you can make things right, especially if you're Paul Levesque from a historical standpoint. But if you go with your choice and you go with Roman Reigns dominating again like he's been for the past 3 years, not to say that Roman Reigns hasn't been a good champion, not to say that the bloodline hasn't been a good storyline, because it's been one of the best storylines that they've come up with in the last 10 years. It's been a tremendous storyline. Eric Bischoff, on his Strictly Business podcast, he lines it all out of why it's a great storyline. But it has to have a period on the end of this sentence, and you have to send the fans home happy. You have to give the fans what they want. They want Sami Zayn. Y'all might want, the company might want Roman Reigns. That's fine. But or Cody Rhodes, but something happened when it came to Cody Rhodes. Just a year ago, when Cody Rhodes made his return to WWE, fans were so much behind Cody Rhodes. It was tremendous. The theme song stuck in my head for weeks and weeks after he had that match with Seth Rollins. And then he had that moment at Hell in a Cell last year where he tore him pectoral muscle, and he had the big black and blue, and he still fought through it. That was his Blood of the Stone moment. That was his moment akin to Stone Cold Steve Austin's moment at WrestleMania 13. That was the moment where the fans seemed like they chose him. But over that time that he's been away and recuperating from that injury, a new person has taken their hearts, and a new person has taken their captured their imaginations, and that person is Sami Zayn. And Sami Zayn has to win tonight in order to make, again, I say, historical injustices correct. We hear a lot of talk about that when it comes to politics, particularly racial relations. But I digress from that. But historical injustices are a real thing, and Montreal was a historical injustice on the part of WWE and the fans of Montreal, and it needs to be made right tonight. And if they don't, it will go down in the history books as as a as another Montreal screw job. I believe so. So, in short, my prediction is that Sami Zayn will walk out of there, even if it's an upset, with the Universal Championship. But let's see. Let's see if WWE goes with what they want or what the people want. I would go what the people want, because there's rumors out there that Vince wants to sell the company for $9 million. UFC got $9 billion. UFC got 4 billion for selling their company to William Morris Entertainment in 2016. Can Vince get more? Of course, the WWE has way more history, especially with their catalog, buying up all the other territories and all the other promotions. And with the WWE network, he's putting the feelers out there. We know that the Saudi Arabia rumors, I don't know if they were true or not, but they've been unsubstantiated or whatever. So we don't know about the Saudi Arabia stuff. But if fans tune out and they start canceling the WWE network, as they have been known to do. For example, like I said, Royal Rumble 2015, when Roman won and Daniel Bryan did not. And Daniel Bryan, who had so much momentum the previous year, ended up being in one of the openers in a ladder match for the IC Championship. Fans were outraged that night. That night was a crazy night. Even The Rock, even one of the most popular superstars in the history of WWE, couldn't even save Roman Reigns that night. That Philly audience, I mean, I haven't seen that Philly audience as vitriolic since ECW closed down. Since ECW closed down before that night. So, um, but they made it right by not having Roman go all the way and beat Brock that night. And they did in the following year they did the opposite. They didn't go with the fans want, and you could hear the boos in Dallas that night. In 32. So if you don't want to if you don't want to riot on your hands, who can remember also another example? ECW, ECW One Night Stand, um, 2006. They could have went with what they wanted. I'm sure they probably wanted to put the belt on Cena rather than RVD, because even though RVD was the crowd favorite and he was the one that people wanted, WWE was still fully behind Cena in '06. But they knew that the crowd in Hammerstein Ballroom that night was too ruckus, and then they were going to blow the roof off the place. This is just like that. Sami doesn't win tonight, and Roman walks out, still a Universal Champion, and they go with their plans of Roman versus Cody, and just Roman versus Cody in a one-on-one. Then they're going to feel the wrath of the fans. Either the fans are going to cancel in droves, or the fans are just going to cause crazy ruckus. It's gonna be like the old territory days where they're gonna have to rush Roman Reigns out of the freaking building, in a cab because the fans are gonna go crazy tonight. But let's just hope, that Triple H, Paul Levesque, and all his wrestling knowledge, supposed to be this wrestling genius, supposed to be this booking genius that everybody's praising, that ever since he's took the reins of power, he's done tremendous things. I haven't really, I mean, the Bloodline storyline started, before he completely took over. I count his reign as starting from SummerSlam onward. So before he really took power, Bloodline storyline. So I can't really point to anything different that Triple H has done than what Vince has done. The Royal Rumble, the men's Royal Rumble this year was one of the worst Royal Rumbles of all time. It was completely predictable. We all knew that if Cody was coming back, he was going to win the freaking thing. You know what I mean? So I haven't really seen anything that Triple H has really done. I've heard all these fans praising Triple H, all these fans talking about Triple H is doing this great, he's doing that great. But what has really Triple H really done that's been so much better than what Vince has already, the groundwork that Vince had already laid with the previous regime? Pretty much seems like all the same thing, really. So, but he has a chance tonight. He has a chance to do something that the fans really want, to really get the fan support and really get the fans rallying behind his new initiative. This is his moment. Just to steal a quote from Ricky Steamboat in his interview at WrestleMania 3, we have reached our moment. And as any critical leader knows, whether he's a president or whether he's a king or whether he's a prime minister or a head of state or a CEO, there comes a time when he must make crucial decisions. He must decide whether he's going to be like the captain of the Titanic and go full on to the iceberg and let the ship sink, or reverse course and do what common sense and wisdom tells him to do and go what the people want. Peace. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Love you guys.